How much are you willing to get paid for 3 months worth of work? Is it $10,000, $20,000, $30,000? Well, we break down what type of investments you need to be looking at.
Hey, friend.
We're at the Loan Lounge again.
The Loan Lounge. So, a good question that I think every investor needs to ask themselves is, what is your time worth? Okay, you want to be in real estate, you want to do this. What are you working for? Are you working for $100 a month? Are you working for $10,000 a month? What are you working for? What do you think?
I think that's a perfect question for especially like newer investors to kind of figure out what that baseline is. So if you're considering a flip, what do you need to net after all, so after your purchase price, after your rehab, after your realtor fees, after your holding cost, after your capital gains, everything's done. What's that number? Is that enough money for the time that you have to put into the project? So if we're talking a cosmetic flip, maybe you're done in, I would say a cosmetic flip, you're probably done in 30 to 45 days for rehab. You're 30 days on market. You're 30 days to close. So you're 90 plus days in. What is worth 3 months of your time is different for everyone. And there's not a right or a wrong answer. And so, but I wonder if that question is being asked enough.
Yeah. I think that, especially with a cosmetic flip. Okay, you're doing a cosmetic flip. Let's say you're going to make $30,000 after your initial holding costs, right? And your initial rehab costs and purchase and all that. Okay, $30,000. Is it just you? So do you have a partner? Is it? So all those types of things. Take into account what you mentioned, the holding costs. So, okay, are you using hard money? Let's say you're at 12%. Let's say your total loan is like $150,000 for everything.
Yeah.
And, so you're $1,500 a month there, right? So if you're 3 months in, so there's $4,500 right there off the rip that you've got to calculate into that.
Yeah. Capital gains. Third rule of thumb is it's 15%. Obviously, everyone has their own tax situation, so get with your CPA. Make sure you know what that looks like for you.
Yeah.
But is that taken out of your calculation and figuring out if that number makes sense? And I think too often, why are we not figuring these numbers out from day one? Because all these numbers are available.
Yeah.
At least high level. Yes, you could potentially go 4 months instead of 3.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that going to make or break the deal? No. Or gosh, it shouldn't. It shouldn't be a $1,500 difference determines if this deal makes sense or not. And a title company, any title company, they can do a net to seller. You give them the address, the purchase price, any costs that are going into it. They'll calculate your seller fees based on the date that you sell and taxes that may be due, etc. And then you take out the capital gains on the back end. And the big question is that enough money to make it worth your time and energy to manage a rehab, to list a property for the stress and anxiety that it may be putting on some people to go through this process? Is it worth it?
Yeah. And I think I have an answer to your question. And that is why do people get into this? So the question is why do people get into this and not do all these numbers on the front end? And the answer to that question is because of the fever. People get the fever. And they watch Bigger Pockets. They watch podcasts like this. They get all jazzed. They start looking at Realtor.com or Zillow or whatever. They're like, oh, let me find a deal. Let me get into a deal.
Yeah.
And they become overcome with emotion. And that's what you got to fight.
Yeah.
Because this is a business. This is, yes, you get the real estate bros that talk about yachts in Miami and all the things and all the, they live in the lifestyle.
Yeah.
And can you get there? Yeah, you can get there, but it's a long slog to get there, and you want to be careful, I would say, of some personalities out there that do promote this kind of instantaneous gratification, because it's not. We talk to real estate investors all the time that are in the poop of it.
Yeah.
It's really it's
Dealing with a nasty one.
Dealing with a nasty one.
Yeah.
I just had somebody that gave cash for keys the other day to some dude that was just still living there, and so he gave him $1,000 and please get out. And when you do that, by the way, okay, if you do cash for keys, be there with your contractor, change the locks
in the moment,
sign something that says, hey,
just to
you're
clarify,
good.
for keys means that if you have a property that you just purchased and it has a tenant in it that is currently in a lease that you just now acquired, you are paying them to get out of the lease as quickly as humanly possible. So what he's speaking of is make sure humanly possible is the second hands go with the money, so does the keys, so does the locks get changed.
Yeah.
Big thing. And it happens often.
Yep.
Often.
Yeah.
Especially on a really great deal that you're like, I want this, but I have to get, this tenant out and figure out my solution here.
And this was a squatter too. Yeah, so I mean,
Nasty.
there's no lease. They're just dudes living in the place. But
yeah, I just think people aren't, focusing on their systems, making sure that, and these systems are different. Like this idea of this is a good deal for me and I'm making this much money and it's going to take me this much time to get there is different for everybody. So I had a story recently. So had a couple doctors down in the Cincinnati area that were newer to investing, not brand new. I think they had like a rental or two, but were wanting to get into BRRRRs or flips. And so they sent me a deal and they were like, can we run this as like a kind of practice run? And so I ran the numbers and they were going to make $40,000 on it. And I was like, that's a good deal for, I would say, most people. So clarification, 40 grand on a deal for most people is a great deal. But factors to consider. It was a heavy rehab, which means stuff can come up unexpectedly very easily, and some things that are very, very costly. So this was a full to the studs and back multifamily property, a full rehab, and it was going to take minimum of 6 months. So that's also a lot of time. And then you're also talking about 2 high income earning people.
yeah.
So is 40 grand in 6 months worth it for a couple that make, I don't know, $300,000 a year as a household?
Yeah.
And their exact response was no. And that's an okay response because they are determining what their time is worth. And alternatively, you or I would potentially take that deal just because, okay, we have the time to give, or that cash makes enough sense because that's our, our little side piece that we're working on. Or maybe we really like the project, or there's so many other factors, but you really got to sit down and figure out what that number is. Because I also think there's a notion that people are making like 6 figures on a flip.
Yeah, no.
That is also not a thing.
Not a thing.
Especially, I mean, if you're doing this full time as well, to kind of think alternatively, there's also a ton of real estate investors that do this full time that making 40 grand on a deal, they would take all day, no matter how long it takes. But they also have, what 6 of these going on at the same time?
Yeah.
That dog makes sense all day long. So.
Yeah. Because they have the systems in place, because they have a crew. I mean, that goes, look at our other videos where we talk about like assembling a crew and making sure that you've got all the people on your team and all that kind of stuff, because that's super important. Because if you do want to make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in flips, you got to have a system in place, because you're not going to be able to do it just one at a time, onesies, twosies here and there, and doing all the work yourself. You're going to need a more elaborate system. So I think, like, okay, if you're just starting out, in my opinion, I think you've got to practice running deals, practice underwriting a deal. I mean, that's what this is at the end of the day, you're becoming an underwriter for your deal. Yep. So the underwriters aren't just with the mortgage company. They're you. I mean, you're determining whether or not you're going to make any money on this. So you want to make sure you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's and thinking of all the expenses up front before you start seriously putting in an offer on a house. And at first it's going to be clunky and it's going to be challenging because there's going to be a bunch of things that you're not thinking of. But lean on us. Lean on your mortgage loan officer. Lean on your realtor. Lean on your contractors. All your people to think of everything about the deal that could possibly be thought of.
Yeah, you're not expected to be an expert in this space. That's why there's so many experts within this space that are going to help you get to that finish line. And I just think slow down the process. Yes, there's going to be deals that need to be acted on very quickly. Okay, we'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
But let's figure out how to really analyze a deal. I typically recommend that our clients take a look, not make offers. This is for practice. You're going to school.
Yeah.
You're doing your homework. Is Investor Lift, Lift, only because this is a website for wholesale deals, off-market deals, nationally recognized. And the reason I think it's a good platform is those are true opportunities for flips and BRRRRs. Where if you went to the MLS, it's not that there's not those opportunities, but there's way less. I mean, it's probably single digits of the overall listings on the market right now are something that you could flip, that you could BRRRR. And so this gives them a really good opportunity to look at a property and say, this is the purchase price. This is the ARV. Okay, based on these crazy photos, could I rehab this thing for 30 grand? And you don't have to be an expert to say, maybe, or there's no way.
Yeah,
There's-
yeah.
And if you at least get a maybe on this, then we can kind of, again, analyze the deal, get you a term sheet, really get you the facts so that you know what a practice run looks like and what these terms are going to traditionally look like moving forward. And then you just duplicate that. The great thing about things at LFG and the lenders that we work with is our numbers, our rates and terms do not change dramatically from one day to the next. Conventional, a little bit here or there.
Sure.
I mean, what? We maybe get a rate change once a month?
Yeah.
Ish.
It
Maybe not
depends.
even as
Yeah.
frequent as that. And so it's not like if you ask me today what terms are, there's a good likelihood tomorrow the terms are going to be the same. We allow this to be a systematic way of saying yes or no to a deal.
Yeah.
Don't make a deal work.